I remember the exact sound my cheekbone made when it cracked. It wasn't just pain, it was betrayal echoing inside my skull. Imagine standing in your own home with your family just a few feet away and realizing that the person who just broke your face isn't a stranger in the street, but your own brother. And when you stumble, dazed, searching for help, your father's voice cuts through the room, not with concern or love, but with rage. This is family, not a courtroom. That moment branded me because in an instant, I understood something terrifying. Sometimes the people meant to protect you will defend your abuser instead. It started with small things, the kind of sibling rivalry you could brush off if you didn't look too closely. My brother always had a temper, a tendency to push things too far, but I thought that was just how siblings were. What I didn't realize was how those small pushes, those smirks when I complained, those half-hearted apologies were building towards something darker. And the silence around it was even worse. Every time I raised my voice, every time I tried to defend myself, I was told I was too sensitive, that I needed to let it go. They trained me to doubt my own reality. On the day it happened, it wasn't some grand argument, it wasn't a huge betrayal, just a spark. A comment, a shove, and then his fist connecting with my face. I can still feel the way the room spun, the sharp stab of white-hot pain. My vision blurred, my balance collapsed, and all I could think was, surely, this time someone will stop him. Someone will see this for what it is. But when I turned to my father, clutching my face, blood dripping through my fingers, all I got was that sentence that still rings in my ears. This is family, not a courtroom. And what does that mean? That family is supposed to be a shield from consequences? That as long as the violence comes from someone who shares your last name, it isn't violence at all? That moment stripped the word family of every illusion I'd ever attached it to. Suddenly, family wasn't safety. It wasn't home. It was a prison where silence was law, where loyalty was demanded at the cost of dignity, and where love was used as a weapon to keep you in line. In the days that followed, the pain wasn't just physical. Yes, my cheekbone throbbed, swollen and purple, but what tore deeper was the realization that my suffering was inconvenient to them. They wanted it brushed under the rug, repackaged as just another sibling squabble. But you can't call it roughhousing when someone leaves you unable to chew on one side of your mouth. You can't call it a fight when one person is sprawled on the floor, gasping, and the other walks away smirking. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for recognition that what had happened was wrong. But recognition never came. That's when I started asking myself dangerous questions. What if family loyalty is just a myth we cling to because the alternative, that blood means nothing, is too terrifying to face? What if defending family at all costs is the very thing that destroys it? And most chilling, if they could watch me bleed and still side with him, what else would they excuse? The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was realizing how long I had been conditioned to accept less than I deserved. I replayed my childhood in my head, all the times my brother pushed me too hard, all the times I cried and was told to toughen up, all the moments I begged for fairness and was told to be quiet. Each one was a rehearsal for this moment, preparing me to swallow pain, to normalize disrespect, to stay silent. But the silence was shattered, along with my cheekbone. So I did what no one expected. I refused to let it slide. Not this time. I reached out for help beyond the walls of my house, beyond the rules of family first. And that decision, though it terrified me, was the first time I felt like I had control. Because here's the truth. Love without accountability is not love. Family without respect is not family. And the irony, the moment I stopped excusing them, I started healing. Painful, yes. Lonely, yes. But real. I learned that healing doesn't always come from reconciliation. Sometimes it comes from walking away. Sometimes it comes from rewriting the definition of family, not as the people who share your blood, but the people who don't let you bleed alone. Even now, when I look back, the scar beneath my skin reminds me silence is complicity, and loyalty without justice is poison. Maybe you've been there too. Maybe not with broken bones, but with words, with silence, with betrayal disguised as love. And maybe you've asked yourself if you're wrong for wanting more. You're not. The wrongness isn't in asking for respect, it's in being told you don't deserve it. In the end, my father was right about one thing. This wasn't a courtroom. It was far worse, because in a courtroom, there's at least the possibility of justice. In my family, there was only the law of silence. But I broke it. And if you're carrying your own version of that silence, maybe it's time you break it too. Because blood might tie you to people, but dignity, respect, and love, that's what makes them worth calling family. Never let anyone convince you that abuse. But the story didn't end with me leaving the room that day, holding my face and my silence. In some ways, that was only the beginning. Because what happens after the bones heal? What happens after the bruises fade, but the memory stays sharp enough to cut you in half at night? That's when you face the real question. Do you keep pretending this is normal, or do you finally admit that love without respect is nothing but control in disguise? I tried to stay. Believe me, I did. I thought if I kept my head down, if I became invisible enough, maybe they would soften. Maybe my brother would feel guilty. Maybe my father would finally understand. Maybe my mother would speak up. But invisibility only made me easier to ignore. The silence in that house was suffocating, and it wasn't just about my cheekbone anymore. It was about all the years of laughter that had always come at my expense. All the times my brother was rewarded for cruelty, all the times I was told to be the bigger person, I realized I had spent my entire life shrinking myself until I could barely see who I was anymore. And that's when the anger came. Not the wild anger of fists and shouting, but a cold, steady anger. The kind that sharpens into clarity. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't ungrateful. I wasn't overreacting. I was a human being who deserved to live without fear of being hit, mocked, or silenced in the place that was supposed to be my safe haven. And once you see that truth, you can't unsee it. But the moment I decided to stand up for myself, the pushback was immediate. Why are you bringing this up again? He didn't mean it. You're tearing the family apart. Isn't it funny how the person who breaks your bones is never accused of destroying the family, but the one who speaks about it is? That's when I understood the real threat to them wasn't violence. It was accountability. So, I left. Not in a blaze of drama, not slamming doors, but quietly, deliberately. I packed my bags and stepped into a world that felt terrifyingly vast. And for the first time, I didn't call it running away. I called it saving myself. At first, the silence of being alone was worse than the silence of being ignored. I sat in empty rooms and questioned if I had done the right thing. I replayed my father's words, "This is family, not a courtroom." And I wondered, if family doesn't give you justice, what does it give you? But then something shifted. I started to notice that outside those walls, people treated me differently. Friends checked in, strangers smiled without contempt in their eyes. Even the smallest kindness felt radical compared to what I had grown up with. And slowly, I began to rebuild, piece by piece, like someone learning to walk again after an injury. I discovered that family isn't defined by bloodlines. It's defined by those who choose to stand by you when you're broken. A chosen family. A circle of people who don't need loyalty demanded because it's freely given. That realization was both heartbreaking and liberating. Of course, my absence didn't go unnoticed. The phone call started. First, it was my mother, "We miss you." Then my father, "You're being dramatic." Then my brother himself. You need to get over it. Each call felt like a tug of war between my old conditioning and my new clarity. But I held my ground, because here's the truth. Forgiveness without change is just permission to be hurt again. And here's something I want you to hear, because maybe you've needed someone to say it. Walking away doesn't make you weak. Setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel. Demanding respect doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you human. And the people who tried to convince you otherwise, they benefit from your silence. Years later, when I look back, I don't just see the broken cheekbone. I see the breaking point, the line I drew in the sand, the moment I stopped confusing survival with living. And while part of me still grieves the family I thought I had, another part of me is grateful. Grateful that the mask was ripped off, grateful that I no longer waste my life waiting for people who will never show up for me. Because in the end, the lesson wasn't about pain. It was about power. The quiet power of choosing yourself, even when it means losing others. My father was wrong. Family should be more than just avoiding courtrooms. It should be the place where you never need one. But if it's not, then maybe the bravest thing you can do is walk away and build something new. And if you're listening to this, maybe you needed to hear that too. Maybe you've been told that blood means loyalty, even when it leaves you bleeding. But remember, you have the right to demand more. You have the right to walk away. You have the right to write a different story. I lost the family I was born into, but I gained the family I chose.